This woman's courage to speak out became the spark in a chain of events that ended in an unthinkable tragedy. This is the Danishka Melina Sibaja Mejia story. Hi, Amy, and hello, listeners.
Hey, Megan, how are you?
Good. It's been a bit since we've recorded.
It has.
So I hope I'm not rusty, though I kind of feel rusty a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure you're fine.
I don't know. We'll see. I miss recording with you. I mean,
know.
I miss recording with you, but not as much as I missed our daily conversations. When you were gone out of the country, it was really hard not to, when we're gone and away and can't talk, my days are
Well, you were also away also, so both our schedules were just crazy.
I know, but I felt like we didn't talk for a couple of weeks every day. And I mean, it was I need my check-ins.
Somehow we survived, though. So maybe we don't need each other, turns out.
All right. Well, I'm just going to say that I am very glad that we are back recording.
Yes.
Today's case is a heavy one, and it's one that my mother alerted me to, which is interesting because, as you probably know, I just recorded an episode with my mother.
Yes.
Which was a much lighter case, I like to think. I mean, not that it didn't involve crimes, but not as heavy as today's. But I will say this. She sent me a news article with a warning that today's was a tough one, and I think she was right. But I read the article and then a few more, and by the end, I was so angry. And while I don't love for anger to fuel my interest in cases, sometimes it's also cathartic to work through the story, the outcome, our analysis, just to go through it and try to figure out, is there any silver lining? Oftentimes there are, and that's kind of where my head was at with this one.
Now, can I just ask one quick question? Will your mother be replacing me as your co-host?
No, but it was a fun idea.
Yeah.
You had a crazy week, and James was like, why don't you record with your mom? You know, she was like your inspiration for true crime. Such a good idea. She's fun, and she was really excited about it.
That's fun. I can't wait to hear it.
She will not be replacing you. There is no replacing you, Amy.
Oh, okay, good.
But I don't know if there's a popular demand. We may have to have her, back once in a while as a guest host.
Okay, well then she can be with me as my guest host.
Oh, that's good. That's right. Yeah,
you like
fun. My mom. Yeah, of course. So I again warn the listeners a little bit, you guys, that there are some details of this case that are necessary to share that are hard to hear. But at the center of this story was a beautiful young woman by the name of Danishka. Danishka Melina Sibaja Mejia, just 22 years old at the time of events we discussed today, was born in Costa Rica and was the only child born to Tom Dolias and Melba Mejia. Referred to as Tita by her close friends and family, Danishka relocated from Costa Rica to Knoxville, Tennessee, where she was living in 2024. She attended Carter High School in Knoxville and played on the volleyball team throughout her time there, and her coaches and others described her as a strong and determined young woman. A competitive dancer as well, her friends say that Danishka loved life, making every day better. By the way, I'm saying Danishka. I saw Danishka, so I'm trying. Sometimes I'm not sure exactly the pronunciation. I hope I'm getting it right. I saw fun videos of her with friends, and she was really a glowing woman, okay? The saying she lit up the room actually applies to Danishka. Incredible smile and just beaming, and that was her. She was very close with her parents, who said that she had incredible character with courage to always do the right thing. And this became evident when Danishka decided to report her sexual assault to law enforcement. On April 4th, 2024, Danishka went to the police station to file a report about an assault that she experienced, unfortunately. According to her, a few days prior, she had been at the home of 39-year-old local Latuan Osborne, who was an acquaintance. I'm not sure how they knew each other. She had one drink, an alcoholic drink, and smoked some marijuana, after which she fell asleep. I saw it suggested that possibly her drink was drugged. I could not substantiate that, so I just want to say it's unclear whether the drink was drugged or she just fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Much to her surprise, though, when she woke up, she was partially unclothed, and the tampon that she had in was no longer there. So she suspected immediately that she had been sexually assaulted. But when she confronted Osborne about what had happened to her, he denied it. Danishka did not believe him, though, and she went and underwent a medical examination. And this medical examination determined that her suspicions had been correct.
Were they able to find DNA evidence?
Yes, they were. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
She had been assaulted, and she was concerned about how Osborne was going to react to her reporting it. Maybe she was afraid of him, or he had a reputation. Later on, I'll talk about possible gang affiliations as well. However, even though she was afraid, she told her mother, even though she was, I shouldn't say afraid, she kind of feared how he would react to reporting it, but she said that she wasn't afraid to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And specifically, she wanted to protect other women from falling victim to this predator, and so she reported her assailant. Unfortunately for Danishka, her fears about Osborne would turn out to be warranted. So later that evening, after she had reported her assault, while Danishka was in her home with two of her friends, 3 masked intruders broke in. The men forced a terrified Danishka and her friends down into the basement of the home. While the men wore masks, Laquan Osborne lowered his mask so that Danishka could see it was him. He was letting her know that he was there. He was angry about the police report she had filed, and he was there to take his revenge. Now, the actions that followed are very disturbing and shocking. Danishka was ordered to shoot one of her friends in the head by Osborne. Yeah, I saw your face. This was shocking.
This is a recent case, too. I've never heard of this.
This is a recent case.
Your mom heard about it, in the news or something?
Listen, my mom is she's like a crime reporter or researcher. Oh. She literally traverses all true crime territory. She did she read it in, I think maybe a People magazine article or something like that, which is how she sent it to me. Mm-hmm. And I just, as a side note, my mom in the episode we recorded said, you just can't avoid true crime. It's on your TV, it's on your phone, it's on your computer. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, well, it's on your TV, phone, and computer because you're searching for it. And she's like, right. Just as a side note. So I was like, okay.
It's not just there if you're not
it's not just you don't open your computer. It's just there. Yeah. Right, okay. Yeah. So as I said, Danishka was ordered to shoot one of her friends in the head. Now, Katya Young, 23 years old and pregnant, very pregnant, 8 months, I believe, was standing next to her boyfriend and the father of her child, DeAndre Thaxton, when Osborne insisted that Danishka shoot Thaxton in the head. Can you imagine this?
No.
I mean, the horror, the terror. Danishka refused to shoot him, though, and begged for Osborne and his accomplices not to hurt them. Such a brave girl. Mm-hmm. However, unfortunately for her, these pleas fell upon deaf ears. Laquan Osborne had brought with him an assortment of drugs, which he forced Danishka to ingest. The drugs included a mixture of fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine. And Osborne callously forced Danishka to snort the drugs multiple times until she fell unconscious. I don't think I've heard, I can't remember either covering a crime like this as well in terms of this kind of forced ingestion.
No.
Now, yeah, okay. Even when she lost consciousness, he forced more drugs into her system through her mouth.
What were his accomplices doing? Holding the other friends hostage?
Exactly. Yes, because he had 2 accomplices. Now, all the while Danishka was slowly losing her life, Osborne and his accomplices were also filming her dying and making jokes about how long it was taking. Very callous. And her terrified friends had to watch in horror then as Osborne put a plastic bag over Danishka's head and hit her several times in the head.
So brutal.
This is so brutal.
Does he have a history of violence, this guy?
Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah, He does. And he reportedly also tried to strangle Young's dog during this awful attack as well. I believe he stabbed the dog. I mean, this is far beyond brutal. When satisfied that Danishka had died, Osborne and his accomplices turned their sights to Young and Thaxton, shooting both of them. Apparently, they shot them and then they fled, but reportedly, one of the assailants came back downstairs, shot a few more times, I don't know, aiming at them or just shooting, then fled. Now, miraculously, both the pregnant woman and her boyfriend survived.
Oh, thank God. The baby?
The baby did survive. I looked that up. I was so concerned about that as well. I was looking everywhere. I don't know if it was intentional, if they weren't trying to kill them, although I assume they were. But the woman who was shot, Katya, was shot like in her arm and hand. So she like lost mobility in her arm, but I don't think she was shot in like a critical organ place, from what I could find. And they attempted CPR on Danishka, but it was not working. So they fled and called the police, who responded immediately. But sadly, as you probably can imagine, it was too late to save Danishka's life. So now they had a murder investigation on their hands, but the suspect would not be hard to find. I mean, he had foolishly revealed himself, and then afterwards, get this, he made a surprising visit to the hospital.
What do you mean?
Why? Oh, yeah. Somehow one of the genius home invaders, while shooting, shot Osborne in the leg, for which he sought treatment at the hospital. I have to believe that perhaps they were ingesting some of their own drugs. Right. Okay, so when questioned by the police very quickly about his involvement in the murder and the attack on Thaxton and Young, shooting them both, Osborne, get this, told the police that he had been there at the home, but to help, not harm Danishka. According to his version, and I don't know how he thought this was going to work, but according to his version, Osborne had been there when Danishka had overdosed on drugs, and while he was trying to save her, home invaders broke in and shot him.
Come on. I'm sure no one believed this story.
No, it was going to be very easy to crack, of course. 2 of the 3 victims had survived, and their version of what happened was drastically different than Osborne's ridiculous story.
And can I guess that his accomplices also threw him under the bus?
They would eventually, yes, of course. And the police report also clearly showed that Danishka had pressed charges against Osborne for a sexual assault, and there was proof of that crime. And then they found the cell phone footage of Danishka dying and Osborne and his accomplices joking about it. But this wasn't the only damning footage, because not only did Osborne film his murder of Danishka, but he also filmed his rape of her several days before. This guy is...
Wow. So brazen. And obviously evil, but...
like awful. We don't use that word a lot, but I'm glad you kind of said it, because I think this is you reserve for cases like this. The medical examiner determined that Danishka's cause of death was toxicity from the drug mixture, which, as I said, included fentanyl. There was plenty of evidence against Osborne and his 2 accomplices, who, by the way, the 2 accomplices, Osborne goes to the hospital, and these 2 stole Danishka's car, only later to set it on fire. I mean, I don't know what the point was, if it was a joyride, if they were high. I really do not know.
Well, they probably realized after they took it that they don't want to be somehow associated to her murder. And so then they thought burning it would be, I don't know.
Well, yes,
Clearly.
I'm sure that's why they burned it. But like, to what end did they take it? Just to flee? Like, just to have maybe just to have a way out of there, because Osborne was taking himself to the hospital, perhaps?
Not the smartest.
No. Now, I don't know exactly how the police identified Osborne's accomplices. There's a number of ways here, though. I can't imagine it was that hard. There was cell phone footage. There's other cell phone conversations linking the 3, I'm sure. Also, Latuan definitely offered up their names at some point. I don't know at what point, but in any event, it was very quickly after Danishka's death and the shootings that 4 suspects were indicted by a grand jury. Now, I said it was Osborne and 2 accomplices. So who's this 4th person? Okay, let me tell you about the people who were indicted and what they're indicted on. So Latuan Osborne was indicted on counts including felony murder, first-degree murder, aggravated burglary, attempted first-degree murder for the attempts on, the 2 other people there, aggravated rape, aggravated kidnapping, and arson.
Yep.
So there was a lot of counts. His co-defendants, Edward Wilson, age 31, and Marquis Ellis, age 20, were indicted on several of the same counts, maybe not including the sexual assault, because I don't believe they were a party to that. Now, in a surprising reveal, LaTuan's mother, Angela Greenberg, age 59, was also indicted on charges of accessory after the fact and tampering with the evidence.
Are you going to talk about those charges? What do those have to do with?
Right. So here's what I know. And again, I'd like to point out there are articles on this, but it's not as much information as you would hope on a case like this, or you would expect to see. But here's what I found. In a search following LaTuan's arrest, guns, masks, zip ties, and other evidence used in the crimes against Danishka and her friends were found in his mother's vehicle. So I assume that they maybe shared a vehicle, shared a home. Maybe she lied for him. Apparently something afterwards. But she obviously wasn't a party, or I don't think was a party to the crime ahead of times. Also, there were additional charges against Osborne and Wilson that related to their gang involvement. So I want to briefly discuss the gang component here. They were alleged to be part of the Gangsters Disciple Gang. Have you ever heard of this gang?
Have you?
I don't think so, to be honest. And I it's not like I've done gang research or work, but I did take one or two courses that involved gang components. And I studied, do you remember David Brotherton? I studied under him at John Jay, he was a gang researcher. So I've read some books on gang members. But
what is this particular gang known for, or?
They originated in Chicago in the late 1960s, and while they have the strongest roots in Chicago and in prisons, they expanded to 100 cities and counting, and they're at least across 30 or more states. So, interestingly, one of their founders, Larry Hoover, who spent 30 years in the Supermax in Florence, Colorado, had his sentence commuted by President Trump, which I found very interesting and would not have expected. Do you teach about, so just briefly, I want to cover what Supermax is, or Supermax prison. Do you ever teach about this in your courses?
Yeah, I'll show them videos. I think it's so, like, you don't ever show, like, Locked Up, Supermax? They have, like, Locked Up Abroad. You've seen those before, right?
Yeah, but I haven't, actually, it's one of the few, because I use videos a lot. So you show videos of what? Like,
of, like, what Supermax looks like. So most Supermaxes is pretty much solitary confinement. You're confined to your cell for 23 hours a day, very limited showers, very limited outdoor time, limited. I don't think you have any interactions with any other inmates, very limited interactions with staff.
Yep.
And obviously very secure as, you know, or more secure than a maximum security. Supermax is as max as it gets.
That's the best description. And we only have one in the country, and that's in Colorado. Although certain prisons have Supermax facility types, but there's only one dedicated Supermax prison, as I understand
I did not know that. Oh, okay. But as you said, a lot of max securities will have Supermax areas, probably.
Yes, that's very true.
Or they'll just call it solitary, right?
Yes, exactly. That's very true. But Supermax, the prison itself, is very intense and is reserved for the highest level of offenders. So, I mean, there's been some very high-profile offenders there who were involved in terrorist activities. I think Ted Kaczynski was there. There's been a number of people that whose names you would probably know. So let me correct that part, Amy. When I say there's only one dedicated Supermax, I mean for the federal system. So there's only one federal Supermax.
That makes more
facilities.
sense.
Yeah, there are. So there's states have Supermax facilities. It gets very complicated with the states, though, because some have Supermax, some just have Supermax in their prisons. But as far as the federal system goes, there's just the one. So Larry Hoover was at this one, and he was supposed to serve a life sentence. But Trump decided that 30 years was enough. Though that was just his federal sentence, because remember, federal Supermax. He has a whole lot more years to serve in Illinois. I think it was something like, I really think, you know, our system, it can't just be life. It's like 200 years, something like that. Though he found support from well-known rappers like Kanye West and Drake, who were having concerts to support his freedom.
Saying he was innocent, or what is the claim?
I think the claim was that he was, you know what, I'm not actually sure. I don't know if they were supporting him for innocence. I think the claim was maybe just that it's too many years as a gang member, and that he was being, maybe it was maybe overly punitive. I don't know his story in full. I just know the sentence. So it could be overly punitive, or it could be on par for his crimes. Anyway, that was just a side note. Back to the current story. While the charges against Osborne and his associates were piling up, what you probably are beginning to ask or suspect is that someone might take a deal. So, who, if anyone, was taking a deal here?
Everyone's going to turn on the main guy.
Well, to date, one of the 4 assailants has pled guilty for his role in the crime, and it might surprise you to hear who it is.
Well, I'm assuming it's Osborne then.
That is absolutely correct. It was Laquan Osborne.
What did he plead to?
But he had a strong incentive here, Amy. You know what the incentive was, right?
Death is off the table?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
As the leader of this sadistic murder, the Knox County District Attorney's Office announced its intention to seek the death penalty against Laquan. And with plenty of evidence, it seemed that it was in his best interest not to roll the dice.
I would agree.
Instead, the prosecution and the defense reached a plea agreement that would spare him the death penalty in lieu of a life sentence in prison with absolutely no chance for parole ever.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about how I feel about that later.
Okay.
Yeah, but I understand. That's as good as it gets. Danishka's family was consulted and ultimately agreed to the plea deal as well. I watched the footage of the sentencing hearing, which was very hard for me to, I found it very hard to watch. Family and friends of Danishka's gathered both inside and outside of the courtroom with shirts that read "Justice for Tita." Katya Young, the 23-year-old pregnant mother-to-be, spoke about the absolute horror of what she went through, witnessing Danishka's murder in such a brutal and inhumane way. I mean, she talked about the callousness of these men. They were killing Danishka in front of them and laughing, making jokes as if though nothing was happening, as if this woman wasn't losing her life. Young said that she was shot 3 times, losing mobility in one of her hands, but luckily, as we said before, not losing her child's life. But she noted that she was very visibly pregnant and they didn't care. They shot a pregnant woman, not caring, maybe even attempting to kill her child. Unclear.
I'm wondering, were they being charged for attempted murder of 3 lives, you know?
Yes, they were.
They were? Okay.
Yes, they absolutely were. Yes, I'm glad you pointed that out. She highlighted the cruelty of the murder and just the loss of Danishka and the long-term trauma that this will have on her life forever. Make no mistake, what I'm saying is the trauma will never leave.
Mm-hmm.
But it was Danishka's mother whose pain was palpable in the courtroom through her words. She spoke about how happy she and her husband were, how much they adored Danishka. They were so happy to have her as their only child. They decided that one was enough because they wanted to give her everything. They wanted to provide her with the best life possible. She spoke about the nightmares that she had every night from knowing what Osborne and his associates had done to her daughter, of losing her hopes and dreams forever, children and or grandchildren, watching her daughter get married. I mean, painful. She said, "I ask God every day to forgive me for my anger and for not setting up a plan for my daughter's safety when she told me, with sobbing pain in her voice, that someone had drugged and raped her."
Oh, so she's putting it on herself. It's so awful.
It really was. She did note, however, that her daughter's legacy would be one of courage and heroism, as in the face of these 3 monsters, she refused to harm someone else and instead fought for their lives and their safety.
Yeah.
I have to concur. And in doing so, I believe that she did not die in vain. And at least one serial violent predator will never be able to harm another woman or man again. And make no mistake, if this man was on the streets, I believe there would be many more victims in his wake. And
it's not just him, his accomplices also. Those are very dangerous people.
Very
All of
dangerous
them.
people.
Yeah.
So the other 3 defendants are still slated for trial, but I suspect we're going to see plea agreements in their cases as well.
I would think so.
Yeah. And I told you this was a hard one because the details are so brutal that it's very hard to explain. So even at this point where we try to explain why and how this happened, it's a challenge. So I'm going to give this a shot, and obviously I'm going to ask for your insights and your help here. Sadly for Danishka, she fell prey to a person I believe was an absolute predator. And in fact, after doing my primary research, I went back again. I was like, let me see, what can I find out about Osborne? And I found out that he was indicted on another murder charge.
That happened when?
That's right. Well, let me tell you, he was charged with solicitation of first-degree murder and insurance fraud in a separate indictment. According to this indictment, he tried to get another man to commit first-degree murder while simultaneously attempting to defraud an insurance company. I'm not sure about that part. Between August and September 2024. So this is the same time frame, or after what happened to Danishka. The man who Osborne tried to solicit a murder against was listed as a witness in a pending crime, a witness for the state. So while the articles did not clarify if this was Danishka's case or another one, I have to imagine it was probably related to Danishka's case. That's just, I could be wrong on that one, though. I couldn't find that. So this is a very dangerous, violent, repeat predator that we're dealing with. And I couldn't find information about his childhood or background, but I think we can probably likely agree that the history of his offenses would indicate a career criminal. What do you think, Amy?
I have no doubt, had he not been caught, he wouldn't continue to do this if anything didn't go his way. And I think control balance is at play here.
Okay, how so?
He felt that he was losing control once he found out that she had reported the initial crime.
Yeah.
I think he realized that he had to somehow get control back of that situation.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, plus, I think someone like him, obviously, there has to be something going on biologically.
You think so? Okay.
It's just so brutal. Sometimes it just seems like it's inexplicable.
It is,
right?
Because these crimes also, so he commits crimes that are non-utilitarian.
Yeah.
Right? He commits acts, let's see, maybe some out of perceived need, some of his crimes, but the attack on Danishka, while probably partially an attempt to silence her, was retaliatory in nature. And I think that he's guided by that anger and emotion.
Mm-hmm. And why harm the other two?
That's, again, non-utilitarian crime.
Yeah.
He's I think, sadistic. And unfortunately, what we know, people who are act out of anger, sadism, these are people and crimes that are inherently less deterrable. Mm-hmm. Do you teach this when you're talking about deterrence, the range of how deterrence works and the difference between the instrumental and expressive crimes?
Yeah. Yeah, because expressive crimes are when people commit violent acts to vent some sort of rage or frustration, jealousy, anger. It's emotional. Right. Whereas instrumental is for some sort of gain, whether it be financial gain or status or something of that.
Right.
And I'm assuming that those are much more easily deterrable.
Yes, instrumental crimes. Yeah, they really are. So
Yeah.
I don't think he's the type of person who is deterrable.
I would agree. Yep.
It's interesting. I actually, I probably should have thought it, but I didn't think about control balance here. So I'm glad that you added that because I think you're absolutely right. I told you your insights were going to be key here. I knew that. But as you pointed out, like we just did our best to explain it, but it's almost inexplicable. It's just so, it's so inhumane. I don't know. You know, sometimes cases do still surprise me. So I want to talk about whether or not the system worked here. And I want to talk about two aspects. There are still 3 offenders who are awaiting trial or who remain to plead guilty to the crimes, because I really think that's the direction that we'll be going in. And I did read that they had given information against Osborne, so I have to imagine that that's going to be part of a plea. But But I want to speak to the system in terms of Mr. Osborne. So while the family agreed to the plea agreement in the interest of foregoing many years of painful court dates, hearings, trials, and appeals, it was the death penalty that Osborne initially faced, as I said. Now, Amy, I think you said that, and I assume you believe justice was served with the life sentence, correct?
Without parole, right? It's without parole.
Without no chance of parole. Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's clearly justice. And I would like to say, and this might not be a popular opinion here, but I think this is the very case for which the death penalty exists. So while I absolutely don't advocate for the death penalty in most cases, and I do believe it's improper, had this gone to a 2-stage trial with a penalty phase, I believe the particular cruelty, premeditation, and the heinous nature of the crime would have served as the aggravating factors to warrant a death sentence. I believe he probably would have gotten death, and I believe that he is beyond rehabilitative efforts. He's not deterrable. I believe that Osborne presents a full danger to those around him, and because I am also a retributist who believes in punishment because it's just, I would have preferred a jury to decide on this one.
Yeah.
That's
but
just
either way, he will never see the light of day,
No,
but
he
he
will
could
not.
still terrorize other inmates and staff at the facility.
And I hope he doesn't. And I'm concerned. I hope he doesn't try to arrange something on the outside. You know, I do believe this man is an ongoing threat. But because justice comes in many forms, and because the family may be comforted by the ultimate outcome and spared one more minute in a room with their daughter's merciless killer, I am glad for them that they have this one step. They've been very vocal about making sure each one of Danishka's assailants receives justice. And as we know from many parents of murdered children, this is the last thing they feel they can do for their child. Their legacy is one that is not of the way Danishka was killed, but her bravery beforehand. Quote, he tried to silence her, but he made her louder, Mejia's father, Tom Dolius, told reporters following Osborne's sentencing. He also added, this is step one. It's a big victory. And we hope for the family that I hope every step that follows is successful as well.
Yeah, I'll be keeping my eye on the case to see what happens to the other 3 defendants.
So here's when I said I wanted to talk about the system, the second part that I wanted to discuss here that you brought up almost immediately, and I'm glad you did, is why don't I know this case? Why is this case not bigger? Why have I never heard of it? Why haven't you? And I sincerely hope that I'm wrong and it's not because she was a minority female. But I'm struggling to find out why this case isn't all over national news and people aren't crying for justice for Danishka.
Many episodes we talk about this, right? But yes, it bears repeating that certain victims are just not given the same platform as other victims. And unfortunately, minority women seem to be the ones that are given the less amount of, quote, airtime, which is very unfortunate and quite frankly disgusting. But that's why podcasts, like ours and others can, help spread the word on these stories. So that's why I'm so glad you covered it, because not enough people are clearly talking about it if we've never heard of it. And we're very involved in the true crime world, and I have not heard about it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad too. I mean, like I said, it was I was really angry. And as I'm telling it, I'm getting angry again, but I'm, her family wants to leave a legacy and they want justice for her and they want people to know her name and what kind of person she was. So I also want to point out that Danishka named her attacker, reported him, and in doing so, she lost her life, but undoubtedly, in my mind, saved the lives of others.
It's a very good point. Not only did she save the life of her friend and her friend's baby, and then her other friend, but you're absolutely right. She saved many potential victims.
I believe so. And I believe that's her legacy. So this topic today dealt with sexual assault. And as a reminder, if you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you can contact the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-HOPE. And that's 4673. Or you can go to RAINN.org. Before we go today, Amy, I believe you said we have a question from a supporter.
Yes, actually, this is from a longtime listener from London, which is great.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. So I'm going to be looking down, reading it off my phone. If this was an email.
Okay.
I would love to hear more about your list, both the content and the process. Do you have a list each? How much info is in the list? Do you have anything you could filter by? Can you see each other's? And how much research goes into a case before it does or does not make the list?
Wow.
That's a great question, and one that I wish we had more of a streamlined...
Like a formal process?
Yes, I wish we had more of a formal process. I think the issue lies in the fact that we get case suggestions from Facebook, Instagram, email, website. James set up a really cool process where it just like automatically shows up in like a database format on the software we use to kind of organize ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we can filter it through there, I believe.
Yes.
Do I? No, because I don't make my life easier.
No.
I like to do things the hard way. So for me, I'll kind of check in and look at the list every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our master list. But then I have my own short list. That's always like 5 cases that I pick myself or I hear about that really are top of mind. And then as it gets closer, I think you do this as well. I'll start researching a case. Sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. Whether
Sometimes
it be too traumatic.
To some other case?
Yes. Yes, actually, sometimes it'll be a case that has received attention. And while researching that case, you find a case hidden somewhere. And you're like, well, that case doesn't have attention, so let me pivot. Right? So there's no, for me, the process is kind of different for every case I cover. What about you?
It's different for me. Yeah, no, I wish I could say that I do have a list of running cases, but I change it. Sometimes a name goes to the top of my list. Sometimes I cross it off. I feel like we choose cases a little bit differently. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you choose like issue-based cases more so.
A lot of times I do.
I tend to choose emotion-based cases. So like I read this and I was angry, or I want to I definitely gravitate more towards like the emotion of it, although recently this year, I've been gravitating towards cases that were precedent setting. So that's I had a list of cases that have been found in legal precedents. But no, I wish I could say that there was like this formal process, but it comes from I get a suggestion from my mother, or I read about something, or, I think back, or I'm teaching a class and I go, oh my gosh, I'm teaching about this case law. I have to cover this class. I have to cover this case. So unfortunately, yes, and there's the master list and then there's our list. And I don't know how, though, Amy, one thing I will say, because we pick cases differently and because we have different areas of interest, I don't think, maybe one time we talked about it and we were covering a similar case or intended to, but in all of these years, in all of these cases, I don't think we've ever had a problem with duplicating each other.
No, there was somewhat of a recent case that I was working on and you're like, oh, I was going to do that one.
Was it Selena?
Yeah, actually it was.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I had that on my list forever. Because that is more of a case that you would normally cover.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's so funny. And I don't know if you saw, but very ironically, this morning we got an email from one of our supporters who said she's like a quantitative data analysis person and she would love to help us get our shit together pretty much. Because she heard us, I guess, during one of our happy hours talking about how we have this list and we don't know how to prioritize things. And
that's actually great.
One other thing I want to add, sometimes I like to make sure if I cover like too many victims in a row, not enough offenders, trailblazers, like I like to try to, speaking of something like the case I covered recently, obviously you can have someone who is a victim, an offender, and a trailblazer, as we saw with Irena.
Yep.
She kind of hits all of the categories, right? But I think it's important to, keep it interesting by kind of making sure we're covering different kinds of cases as well.
Well, thank you. Great question.
Very
Not great
question.
answers from us, but great question. We appreciate it. Thank you for your questions. And thank you, everyone, for listening today. We'll catch you next time on Women in Crime. Women in Crime is written and hosted by Meghan Sachs and Amy Shlosberg. Our producer is James Varga. Script editing is by Abigail Belcastro. Audio editing is by Siler Burr and Jose Alfonso. And music is by Desert Media. If you enjoy the show, please remember to follow and leave a review. You can also support the show through Patreon, where you can get access to additional ad-free content such as exclusive full-length episodes, lectures, a book club, and virtual happy hours with Meghan and Amy. For more information, visit patreon.com/womenandcrime. Sources for today include the Charlotte Observer, People.com, WBIR.com, Law and Crime News, and WATE 6 News.